I call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee for Thursday, March 20, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for watching at home. A couple announcements. Same announcements I make all the time. Shouldn't be shocking news. First one is if you can shut the ringer off on your phone. Hopefully there's a little switch on the side if you have an iPhone, and if you don't, I've been told it's the same thing. Second announcement is this meeting is being shown live on the local broadcast channel by SMAC, recorded for future internet access and entertainment. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to open the public hearing. Okay. Lisa made the motion to open the public hearing, seconded by Arnie. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Public hearing is now open. What was the question? Please use the microphone. I really can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Can I have a point of order? Yeah.
What is the point of order?
I wanted to make a quick comment.
Well, that's not really a point of order. That would be a comment.
Then point of contention? No, I don't know what it's called. Point of, what is it called?
It's not really a point of order if you have a
Oh,
comment.
can I speak for a second, just to make two sentences?
Yeah, what's the
Thank
sentence?
you. I just wanted to say that I found it to, I don't think there was any need for a town official to vilify members of FinCom for merely doing the vetting process that they were elected to do. And furthermore, I feel it's illogical and misleading to refer to FinCom members who were just doing that job to then be labeled as embarrassing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have the public hearing open. We have 7. Yes, Lauren?
I have a request that no one speaks unless they are identified by the chair. Period.
Well, thank you very much for that, Lauren. I think it's an excellent idea. That's what we're supposed to be doing the whole time anyway. But yes, as a reminder to everyone, please don't talk over other members. Please don't talk over the public. Wait to be recognized. That will keep this meeting hopefully running smooth. We can get our work of the people done here, which is what we're really here to do. All right. We have 7 articles on the special town meeting, and the Rules Committee has assigned all 7 to the Finance Committee because we do a wonderful job here. So, we're going to cover all of these. We're going to jump to Article 2, though. Do we have a presenter for Article 2? This is item 5 on the agenda, page 2 of your special town meeting warrant.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Keith Nasasia, Water and Sewer Superintendent. This Article 2 is more of a house cleaning thing we presented previously to FinCom. This is Phase 6 water main improvements. It's $1.5 million, and this is a loan through MWRA. It is a 10-year loan, 0% interest, so it would be same equal payments over 10 years.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 2, Water Main Improvements, Phase 6? Elliot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much money do we have in the enterprise account, water enterprise account?
You just didn't want me to listen for the retained earnings?
Is your mic on? Thank you.
Are you looking for the retained earnings?
Yes,
Okay, if you can just give me 1 minute, I'll bring it up.
okay.
You don't have it up yet, do you?
Do you want me to sing in the meantime? Okay.
There is no singing
It's
allowed.
approximately 2.4 million, 2,456, I believe, is what it was retained at. So if you can just give me a minute, I'll get you an exact figure.
That's close enough.
Approximately 2.4.
All right, thank you for that, Elliot. Do we have any other questions on Article 2? Arnie?
Hi. Hopefully, I'm stating the obvious. This is going to be paid for through the enterprise fund.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Arnie. Any other questions? Diane?
Thank you. I think we can use a lot of improvements in town. Not that we haven't done a lot, we've done a lot. Do you have earmarked for some sections of town?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the roads have already been selected. And
Okay, is that
yeah,
anywhere like on the website so people can go and see when all of this is going to happen in their neighborhood?
It will be posted once everything is approved, because last thing I want to do is put, false hope up there.
Okay.
Once everything is approved, then the roads will be listed, correct,
Perfect,
yes.
thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Vaughn. This is to pick up off of the previous speaker on the retained earnings question. Are we using any best practices or policies on how much needs to be in retained earnings carried over every year? Like, does there need to be something in the pot? And if so, how much do we need to maintain in that pot so that it doesn't go in the wrong direction? Like, is there a number?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the body, to follow off on Mr. Hansen's request, the water retained earnings, I had given you the sewer earlier, water retained earnings is $1,046,915. After the article that we will be voting in the annual town meeting, originally it was $1,482,823. Financial policy and procedures are being worked on at this time, and as we go forward, we will come up with a policy to put money away in a capital stabilization fund for each one of these enterprise funds.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much for that. Dave, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I just need help. I just need help with the number, because the only number I wrote down that I could hear clearly was the 2.4. So now it's a new number of 1 point something. So what is that?
The water retained earnings, which I believe everybody got the retained earnings along with the free cash at least a month or so ago. Certified retained earnings for the water department is $1,482,823. At the annual town meeting, we have the appropriation estimate of $435,907.93. That will leave a balance in retained earnings of $1,046,915.07. This money stays with the enterprise fund and becomes the beginning of the retained earnings for the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Lisa?
It's on, but it's not. Is this covering the pipes, this 1,500,000, the phase that we're doing here? Like replacing the pipes?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, yeah, it's replacing water mains and services.
All right, thank you very much for that question and answer. Any other questions from the committee on Article 2, water main improvements? Elliot, it looks like you have a question.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. About how many miles of do we have left to be upgraded in the water system, mains?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. The town currently has 155 miles of water main. And there's over 60% of it is from the 1940s and 1950s, which it's a soft metal. There's a lot of the real metals were used for the war, for the bombs and the bullets. So there's, I don't have the actual exact number of miles, but I can tell you it's pretty substantial more to beat by the phases, because, and it's approximately $1 million to $1.5 million per mile to replace a water main. It's very, very costly because, there's road restoration. It's the water main itself, the construction. Then it's turning over all the services from the old to the new. The town has to renew the service from the main to the sidewalk, the street valve. So there's a lot of financials that go into just replacing the main. And then, the cost of construction, because, we can't do it in-house, it has to be contracted out. It's just, it's too large of projects to be done in-house. So, if you're looking at, if we have to eventually replace, just say 90 miles of main, that's $90 million you're looking at. That's at today's cost. That cost keeps going up with the cost of construction, cost of metals, cost of products, everything.
When you do a survey for the water, if you allow the second question, does the sewer system also get appraised as to its condition, and so you can do maybe both at the same time?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's two different projects. Obviously, with water and sewer. We have an ongoing sewer I&I program, which we investigate, the town, and we do sectors of the town. And we do our best to not do a water main, restore the road, and then 2 or 3 years we're digging up because of the sewer. We do a lot of cold-in-place lining, cement-in-place lining, I'm sorry, on the sewer main to not impact the roads. I don't want to get off base with water main work, but we coordinate as much so we only disturbing the road one time.
Do gas pipes also run in that same trench?
No, you need 10 feet of separation, and we coordinate everything with all the other utilities when we're doing water main work, as well with the highway division of DPW, that when we do our water main work, that they know they're going to come in within 6 months to a year, sometimes 2 years, all depending on the amount of projects going on, to restore the road once the water mains are done. But we also coordinate with the gas company, Verizon, National Grid, if they have any buried services that they're going to renew their stuff, or there's things could be that it's not on their plan at all within the next 5 years to restore. So, so they said once again, so the road is only disturbed one time.
Is Central Street one of the ones that'll be worked on soon, or don't know yet?
We have a plan. Said I don't want to start putting out what streets we're doing right yet.
Okay.
It's not like it's a hidden secret. I could definitely have a conversation with you offline. But like I said, I don't want to put false hope out there. Oh, we're doing this. Why aren't we doing mine? Because then it just becomes could be a political nightmare.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 2, Water Main Improvements, Phase 6? Hearing none, do we have any questions or comments from the public on Article 2, Water Main Improvements, Phase 6? Hearing none, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will now go to Article 1, Deposit to Stabilization Fund. Do we have someone who would like to present this?
Mr. Chair, before we move forward, may I make a comment or identify why we have so many stabilization fund accounts here that we're trying to recognize, or would you like me to wait for article?
Yeah, if you'd like to make that clarity now, that would be great.
Okay. We just want to be clear that this year, as you all know, we received over $12 million in free cash. Our job right now is to preserve as much of that free cash for future expenses that may be coming up. And there's reasoning behind this. It's not necessarily just to hide the money, but it's to plan for the future. And we heard the Finance Committee, we heard the public state, it's time for the town to start saving. So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. With that, would you like to move forward and present Article 1?
Yeah, please
Sure.
bring the microphone
which
close
is,
to
which
us.
is Deposit Stabilization Fund. I'll make a reminder announcement to everyone who speaks tonight to make sure you speak loudly, clearly, and into the microphone. Make sure the light is green so that everyone at home and here in the building can hear you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So at this point in time, we have a stabilization fund deposit to general stabilization fund. The balance in the account as of February 26, 2025 is $7,926,523.20. With this deposit that we would like to do at town meeting, that will bring our principal balance up to $10 million. We feel as though this is a very strong position. This funding is only going to come in once, and we're trying to preserve as much as we can. So we would like to transfer $2,073,476.80 to the General Stabilization Fund from free cash.
Can you repeat
thank-
that number again, please?
Sure. $2,073,476.80. That will give us a principal balance of $10 million.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 1, Deposit to Stabilization Fund? Carolyn?
Hi, good evening. I have a quick question. First of all, this is the General Stabilization Fund, which means, we want to keep money in there in case of, except for dire emergency. What are some things that would constitute a dire emergency?
In this case, I would leave the stabilization fund alone. I would leave the principal there. I would not touch it. A dire emergency would be, for instance, if we had a catastrophic event, if we had dams in the town that we needed to replace and repair a dam until we could get funding from DCAM and get borrowing into place. This is something you would use it for. If you had a catastrophic building that burnt down and you needed to address these things, that's something that you'd want to deal with, is catastrophic issues and not just general operating budgets, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. And this is I know this is a town meeting question, but it's a majority to deposit, but a 2/3 to withdraw?
That's correct.
Is that the correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Coulter?
I'd like to share another example of a use of general stabilization that is more likely and quite possible given the uncertain economic times. Let's say you vote the budget and it's done, town meeting passes the budget. 4 months into the budget year, the state is suffering from incredibly unforeseen, difficult economic times. There is a mechanism called 9C cuts. It happened 4 times in my 13 years in the legislature, where the state comes back and says, I know we promised you X amount of dollars in Chapter 70 and an unrestricted local aid, but we can't keep our promise. We're reducing it by $1 million. And our budgets are already cast. That's where one would consider using a general stabilization fund.
Well, thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from the committee? Article 1, Deposit to Stabilization Fund. Lisa?
Hi, good evening. So, and I'm just going to... Hi. So I'm just going to ask you if you can read the numbers slowly so I can write them down. So I just want to follow through the tax recap form where last year we did a hold for $650,000, I believe it was, but I see it here for $650,666.
We're on Article 1, Deposit to Stabilization Fund.
Yeah,
Is
but
this question
it's
relative
related
that?
to the
Thank you.
stabilization and free cash, so I can follow where we're going with that. So my question is, we started, when you say that $12,700,000 we started with free cash, does that include that $650,666, just as a starting question?
It was approximately $694,000. The answer is yes. However, if somebody would like training on free cash and how it works, please feel free to contact the town manager's office, and we can sit down one-on-one with the town manager and go over it.
I want to follow through where we're going right now, because we have all the articles from the annual town meeting
Lisa, we're talking about the special town meeting deposit stabilization fund, Article 1.
Excuse me, these questions should be vetted in public. We're in a public meeting, correct? So the
Thank you very
public
much
should
for reminding
understand when
me.
we have the free cash and what we're doing with it. It shouldn't be a private meeting. It should be in public.
Lisa,
So
I'm not advocating for a private meeting. I'm just advocating that we follow the agenda. So please
This
keep your,
is in the
please-
agenda to
please-
understand.
Please keep your question or tie it to deposit stabilization
I
fund,
am,
Article 1.
because
Thank you.
this article relates
Thank you,
to
Lisa.
it. So, so
Thank you.
we need to clarify this.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd rather not have a private meeting for obvious reasons. I'm more into a public meeting. So again, looking at the annual town meeting, we have $5,387,827.01 assigned to free cash. Then when I add up the special, which is the stabilization free cash money from tonight, I identified $6,337,215.61. So that only comes to $11,723,042.64. So I'm looking to reconcile where the delta is going on that money, and I wanted to know if the 12 million, you have to know where it starts. That 12,700,000, if that's 650,000, I don't know how it came up to, went from the tax recap sheet to 694,000. So, and then last night we heard, well, not last night, Tuesday.
Lisa, can you please ask a question in regards to Article 1, please? That would be
It
great.
is all
Thank you.
related. This is stabilization fund utilizing free cash.
Then
It is not.
Then can you
Can you
just
stop
ask-
interrupting me so we can get
You
into
should take your own
answers for the
advice, but thank you.
this is for the public, Vaughn. That is our job.
I'm well aware of our
This
job,
is for the
Lisa, but thank you
taxpayers
for
to
the reminder.
understand where their free cash money is going. I want it on record that there's nothing but pushback to get
No
answers that
pushback
is.
at all. I'm just asking for you
You
to ask a
keep
question.
interrupting me when I'm trying to get answers for
Okay,
myself
ask
and
the
the public.
question in regards to Article 1, and I won't interrupt you. Ask the question.
I'm going through the process to ask the question.
Okay. Can you
Listen,
get-
I let you talk and ask your questions. I want to do
Let's
mine.
all simmer down a little bit.
Exactly. Simmer down and let
Please.
me go through the process.
Lisa, please don't interrupt and be rude. Now ask your question in regards to Article 1. Thank you.
Excuse me, I want it on the record that I'm not being rude. I'm trying to get information for the taxpayers.
Lisa, we're all
I'm
here for
not
the
going to be
taxpayers.
bullied into not protecting the taxpayers to
Lisa,
find
I
out where
protect
the
the
money is
taxpayers
going.
every day. Can you please ask a question in regards to Article 1?
Well,
Thank you.
if you would stop interrupting me, I could get through to the question.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Do you want to summarize where we are so far, or would you like me to start over again?
I'd like you to ask a question. Thank you.
Okay. I'd appreciate if I didn't get interrupted again. Thank you. So again, with regard to a public hearing and meeting on the free cash, I'm looking to see, I came down to $276,957. On the select board meeting, I heard a transfer of $866,000. So this is a very simple question. We've got an annual town meeting and a special town meeting that is purporting to use free cash, and it is not tying to the 12 million, and it is it $12,700,000 even in free cash?
Mr. Chair, through you to the members of the public, as well as to members of the Finance Committee. Each member in this Finance Committee did get a copy of the certified free cash. And I will bring that up again. And I will say this very slowly. 12,722,449. As you have all received your copies, that is your certified free cash that was approved by the Department of Revenue. That is the total. And these town meetings that we're working on now, we're working on the special town meeting. So the special town meeting, based on your reports that you have in front of you, if you take each article and subtract that from the total of 12,722,449, you will get a running balance. So at this town meeting for the special, we are allocating out on this particular article 207347680. So as we go through each article, we will go ahead, and when we are complete with each article, then we will have a balance.
Okay, so to follow up on my question, I total for this special town meeting that we're doing tonight, $6,337,215. Is that the number that you come up with? And the only reason these questions need to come up is because the numbers have been changing. So I'm just trying to get a solid answer as where we stand right now.
Mr. Chair, to members of the Finance Committee, the members of the public, the town meeting voters, these numbers will always change, especially if you change it tonight, you're going to have a change. We get to town meeting floor, town meeting reps decide not to put in for the revenue that we have. So this is what we have for the balances that we're working with tonight.
Okay, so-
Town meeting could, please don't interrupt me, town meeting could change the balances, which is well within their right, as that is their job. The information here is basically preliminary based on town meeting vote, what we are presenting that we feel is in the best interest of the community as a whole.
Okay, so I think you misunderstood my question. As what we're being presented with tonight, are you coming up with the $6,337,215? I'm fully aware that numbers change based on how we or town meeting votes.
As I stated previously, when we're done tonight, if nothing changes, then we will come up with the total remaining.
That's what I'm asking, what that number is. Do you have that in your spreadsheet?
No, because none of you have voted on these motions. If they change, then the figures will change. So at the end of this meeting, we will total up how much we have remaining. Thank
Okay,
you.
I just feel resistance here because we have the total. I added them up. All I'm looking to do is to see if our accounting department can confirm what is being presented to this finance committee tonight. That's it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
quite frankly, I will no longer take insults. I do my job, I do it appropriately, and to be perfectly honest, I am an expert in what I do. And some members of this committee are not experts in what they do, but they try to make pretend they are. And I will answer my questions as we go forward. You don't like the answer, I'm sorry about that.
All right, thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions in
excuse
Article?
me, Vaughn.
Lisa, hang on a minute. Hang on.
This is a straightforward question of a confirmation. It is not calling anybody's expertise into question. It's self-evident that there's unnecessary
Okay,
friction
Lisa,
here.
let me see if
When
let me-
I'm
Lisa.
trying to get a summary answer so that we can be on the same page.
Lisa, did you add up all the numbers?
Yes,
What was your number?
I've said it 3 times now, but I'll say it again.
Okay, thank you.
It's $6,337,215. I am just looking.
I'm writing it down.
I know. I'm just
6 million.
looking for a confirmation of that information.
6,337, and what was the rest of it? 215. Okay. All right, if you add it up and that's what you got, then, I mean,
Again, the question that I'm trying to vet is I'm looking for confirmation that my number is correct. That's it. I didn't produce this paperwork. I'm just looking for the confirmation of it. That is not being rude. That is doing a job, trying to get a handle
Well-
on $12,722,449.
Mr. Chairman, I may have a
thank
solution for us.
thank you for that.
Once we get
Mr.
through-
Coulter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we get through it, before we lose our CFO, could we go through it and then we promise at the very end we'll total
That would
it?
be great, thank you. Yes.
Instead
we
of
can-
totaling it after each one.
Well, that's why I'm trying to keep everything per article. So at
Thank
the
you very
end, we
much.
can add up the cost of all the cheeseburgers and stuff and come up with a total and then go from there.
Okay, so-
Chet, do you have anything on this?
Wait, I
saw you
didn't
had-
finish summarizing that. So the context of my question for myself and the public is so that when we take that 12,722,449 less the annual town meeting of 5,387,827 plus the total of what we're voting on tonight for free cash, I want to see the balance of what is left and if that ties to the other numbers
We will
that I've
figure that
heard.
out when we get that far along. but
That's
thank
all
you,
I'm
Chet.
asking.
Thank you, Lisa. Chet?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that we're getting off track. We have our articles here to do. Free cash, everybody should know about the free cash. We have the figures. At this point in time, we don't really know until we vet all these and get the final number. So I don't think we should be doing what we're doing, getting our financial CEO problem. As you can see right now, she's having some problems. And I think we should just tone it down, get along with these, then we'll get the figures when we have the actual figures. We can't speculate on what is happening now because everything's going to change. She already said that. So let's move on and do these articles. I appreciate it. And this all calm down. It's not, and we already had members saying that if you want to speak, raise your hand. All I hear is just people blurting out. The chairman is in charge of the finance committee, not the members. So if the finance committee chairperson says, you know, kind of like tone it down and stop, you stop and wait. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chet. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 1, Deposit to Stabilization Fund? Hearing none. Do we have any questions or comments from the public on Article 1, Deposit to Stabilization Fund? Hearing none. Thank you very much. We will go to Article 3, which is Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund. Would you like to present this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Through you to the members of the Finance Committee, the public, the town meeting representatives, with the deposit to the Building Stabilization Fund, again, we are doing our best to build for the future. The balance on the Building Stabilization Fund as of February 26, 2025 is $2,164,888,009. Our request for this fund is to deposit $3,833,511.91, which will give us a principal balance of $6 million. Again, we're building for the future. We know we have future building projects that are being proposed, and we want to make sure that we actually have funding for feasibility studies and other actions so that we do not have to go to borrow on some of these smaller things.
Well, thank you very much for that explanation and presentation on Article 3, Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 3, Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund? Mark.
Good evening. Good evening. Through you, I guess I picked this one just because it was at the $3,835,000. And it's a lot. I know we do have a lot of buildings that are coming up that need work and stuff. I was wondering why any amount of this, why it wasn't put into the fire apparatus stabilization fund, so that way we can get that one fully secured and we're good to go.
If I may, we have the Fire Apparatus Stabilization Fund that I believe we had already voted a week or two ago.
Right.
And with that, we are depositing $1,150,000, which leaves us $1,221,667.85. If that gets voted at town meeting, what we're trying to do is we know that we have the community center that we're going to need funding. We don't know how much at this point, but we're trying to build for the future, and our capital plan going forward is that we will continue to put money into the fire apparatus fund, so that by the time we get to the payment in June of 2029, it'll be fully funded and we will not have to borrow.
Right, but that was my thought too, is not to borrow, but here we could just, it's already, and then whatever money that you were thinking of putting in the future, you could put into this. We're already, you know what I mean? We know we need the 2 million for the fire truck. So why not get the 2 million? We're done. It's already saved. We know we don't have to put nothing in there.
Sure.
It's already saved.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Coulter.
Mark, I think, I hear you loud and clear. I think very bright people can come up with 5 different plans as to where the money should go, and they're all right. They're all 100% right, and you raise a good point. The select board, who are the policymakers, made it clear to us that they heard the residents. The residents were asking, just like we do in our personal lives, to set up different savings accounts so that we don't get stuck in the future. And the bond company, Moody's, thinks it's wonderful, thinks it's brilliant. If you look at our personal lives, some people have a general checking account to pay their bills. Then they may have a retirement account to position themselves for retirement. Then they may have an education account for their children to go to college. And some people, not me, have an emergency account in case something goes wrong. In the town of Stoughton, we've got 100-year-old buildings. You know, this building is almost 150 years old. So that's why we want a building account that is only used for that reason, so we don't get cut short. We've got a general stabilization account so we can deal with unforeseen circumstances that we couldn't possibly know were going to happen at the time we're planning this budget in collaboration with the FinCom. We've also got major capital expenses that in my 3 years here I've seen cripple the town, like a $2.5 million fire truck. So we've decided let's save for that and let's avoid the interest rate. So the guidance we took in making these recommendations was from the select board. But as I want to finish where I started, that was their position as policymakers. Your recommendations are just as good as theirs because bright people can come up with a half a dozen different solutions to this. So at the end of the day, who makes the final decision? Town meeting. And so I think everybody should give their input as to where it should be. We have no design on it other than we took direction from our policymakers, my bosses. And that's what this is. But you're very bright people and very experienced people. If you have different views and the majority supports that, then we should change that because it'll be the FinCom's budget and the FinCom's vote.
All right, thank you for that.
I'm sorry, the town meeting, the warrant articles. Thank you, Biz.
Okay.
Okay, you good? We have any, Carolyn, you have a question?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, and to whoever can answer this. This is a majority deposit in, and is it also a 2/3 withdrawing? Or is it, because I hear different things, that's why I'm asking.
I am not legal counsel. I would refer that to legal counsel as far as the votes. This does come up at town meeting, and
Okay.
the moderator will ask the legal counsel, what are our votes going in and what are our votes going out?
Okay, thank you, I was just wondering if anyone knew,
You're
but thank you.
welcome.
Mr. Chairman, on that, I will get answer from council tomorrow morning, and we'll put an email out to all of your members on the answers to put in and put out of each of those accounts.
Yeah, could you, for all of them, because I have the same question about all of them.
Absolutely.
Other than the main one.
All right, thank you for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Lisa?
So I just have a couple of questions here on this. So the other night, we were told that the General Stabilization Fund is money to be kept in there. Basically, it's there for the bond rating, for Moody's, to be able, so is that an incorrect statement right there? We were told that the other night.
It's there to deal with an unforeseen emergency. It's not there for money in, money out all the time. It's there to deal with an emergency. With the statement I made about the bond company is all about risk management. If you have $10 million in your stabilization account and you can deal with unforeseen crises like a 9C cut, they view the risk as being lower. Therefore, their opinion and their bond rating goes up.
Okay, so it
no,
can
it's
be
not
tapped.
there just to appease the bond rating company. It's there to serve the citizens of the town who have said they want to see us save money. The bond company just recognizes it and appreciates it.
Okay, so that's the first part. So then, is this true when we make a deposit, when we're voting on these articles, and we say a deposit can go into a fund, is this a correct statement? There's no obligation that when the money comes out, it's used for that specific purpose. In other words, it's just an intention of what it's used for. And the reason why I'm asking the question for the context is if that is a yes, it doesn't matter. The money can come out based on how town meeting votes for it to come out in an article. Why would we have multiple funds is my question. Why wouldn't we combine them? So if the intention is that clear?
The special purpose funds are for those purposes. The general purpose fund are for general unforeseen conditions.
Through you, Vaughn.
I'm not sure I understand your
That's
question,
okay.
Lisa, I'm sorry.
No problem. So I understand that on the general, that's
Okay.
aside. So, for example, we're talking about a deposit to a building stabilization fund, and then we have a fire truck. But the question is once the money goes into those funds, when it comes out, does it absolutely have to be used for the purpose with which we're voting it in for, or could it be used for something else, is the question.
All money taken out of the fund is supposed to be taken out for the intended purpose, and it can only be taken out by the vote of town meeting.
So if there was an article, if we put it in for the fire truck, could we then if town meeting voted, could it take that money out of that fund for a completely different purpose?
No, because it's based on what it's intended for.
So when it goes in, what it's going in for, it has to come out for, is what you're saying. Okay.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Elliot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. This money in the stabilization fund, various stabilization funds, see if I'm right or wrong here. It earns interest, and it lowers the interest that we pay through the bond council. Is that correct?
All of these accounts, they do earn interest, and what we're trying to do is put the town of Stoughton on a more financial sure footing. If you read the Moody's report that you all have a copy of on the summary, it says what we can do to increase our Moody's rating. And one of the things that they have is to increase your reserves, and these are reserves.
So that the interest rate that we pay goes down based on our financial responsibility.
Yes, just like your own. It works the same way, but everything goes out to bid, so yes,
Not in
you
my
are
case,
correct.
but that's okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just a
Yes,
quick
Mr.
analogy. Elliot, it's almost like when one buys a car. If you've got an 800 score on your rating, on your credit score, you may get a 2.2% interest rate. If you've got a 590, you either A, won't get the borrowing, or you may get a 7% interest rate. It's the same thing. Exactly.
All right, thank you very much for that, Elliot. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Mark, you have another question on this?
Not really another question, but to piggyback off of Lisa, I think, on her question, I believe to take, like, say you wanted to take money out of the fire apparatus stabilization and put it over here, you have to dissolve the fire stabilization
No.
altogether, or no?
No.
No, the only thing that would come under a dissolve would be on an enterprise fund. You don't
enterprise.
close, yeah, the stabilization funds stay out there.
Okay.
Okay.
I knew it was one of them dissolves.
Thank you for that, Mark. Any other questions from the committee on Article 3, Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund? Dave?
Thank you, Vaughn. Just to kind of come around on the same question thread that's happening is in reverse. Now that we have this new capital stabilization account, couldn't that become an umbrella that covered any of those categories like apparatus and building and so forth? in reverse, isn't it flexible enough to do the same thing, allow you to spend on any of those categories if it was in the capital stabilization?
Like I said in the beginning, David, bright people can all have great answers and great remedies. All we're doing is we took direction from the policymakers. We put it here, but the Finance Committee may have a better idea. So, no, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. Your opinion is valid.
I just asked the question, if in reverse,
Go ahead, please.
you had a capital stabilization plan, is it flexible enough to accommodate the categories that the others are locked into?
No. And the reason, because the proposed motion that we have right now is that it's a capital equipment stabilization. So capital equipment would be buying a $50,000 lawnmower or a pickup truck, police car. So it's classified as capital equipment. Capital equipment is just that, capital equipment.
So it's another specialized account. I would follow up if I can. Do I still have the floor? Sure. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that's easier than getting cut off. If all in, the 12/7/22/449, it all comes in, we all get it done, it shows up at town meeting, it all gets voted in. How large is our reserve?
Well, once we finish getting through this, then we'll have the total reserve. There's reserves that are going into the annual, and then there's reserves that will be going to the special. So once we finish this exercise, then we'll have a total.
Oh, no, I guess projected? Is it a projected question I should ask?
The total is about $18 million.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the committee on Article 3, Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund? Elliot.
Sorry for belaboring all this information here, but correct me if I'm wrong. We've got 3 stabilization funds, okay, which are dedicated, earmarked for a certain thing. But if we needed money from, say, the building one, because it's the bigger one, we needed access to some of it. You'd have to do it through town meeting, you'd have to authorize in the article to withdraw it, and then you'd have to have another article to put it in this other fund. Is that correct or incorrect?
That's a very good question. Typically, you're only going to take money out of a stabilization fund to fund the project itself. You don't take money out of a stabilization fund to transfer it to another fund.
Right.
I'd prefer to check the legality of that before I answered.
Okay, fine.
My recollection in the past, when we bought like an ambulance or something like that, in the motion, it said so many dollars in cash or whatever, and then so many dollars from the fire apparatus stabilization account. If I remember correctly, that's how it was funded in the past. It wasn't 2 separate things. It was in the funding source. And then
Yes,
that required a 2/3 vote.
I'm just saying, if there was exigent circumstances where we had to have some from the building stabilization fund, that we could, by authorization only in an article, is 2 articles, 1 to withdraw it from this fund and 2 to deposit in that fund.
I don't believe that you could do that, just my opinion, because for example, building stabilization, which is what we're talking about, that's for building stabilization, so I don't think you could pull that out for something non-building stabilization related. That's just my opinion. But I'm not an attorney, although I play one on TV.
We'll let the lawyers figure it out.
All right, thank you very much, Elliot. Lisa?
Yeah, that's the very point I was trying to make last time about having less funds so we don't run into that problem of having to transfer. So I really would like that, and it's kind of hard to vote on this to put money into something that you might not be able to take out for a purpose which unforeseen circumstances, to the previous speaker's point and my own earlier.
Mr. Chairman,
Well,
just
thank you very much for that, Lisa. Mr.
hopefully I
Calter?
can put it in perspective. We sound like a town that just hit the lottery, and the relatives are arguing over how we're going to spend it. Stoughton isn't used to having such wealth on hand, and I understand the complexities that come with that. What we're trying to do And, the elected officials who work in that office only get reelected when they listen very closely to our taxpayers. And our taxpayers have been asking for these funds to be set up and for us to work towards saving money. To take money out of a stabilization account to buy a truck, that the savings are dedicated to that makes sense. To take money out of a building fund to pay for a new truck down the road, it kind of reminds me of my wife who wants to take money out of the college fund to go on a cruise. So we're just trying to get money in the right, sorry, Patty. We want to get money into the right boxes, into the right places. And town meeting, which is our legislative body, if it is legal to take money out of one account to serve some other need, then they're going to make that decision. It's not us. It's not the policymakers. It's not the select board. It's not the town manager. It's not the finance manager. At the end of the day, it's town meeting. But let's get used to having some wealth.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Calter. Lisa?
I just want to respond to that a little. It is nice.
Did my wife text you too?
No. So I do appreciate you saving and listen. I do want to say that at first. But being a finance committee member, trying to look out for the public, before I vote on something, as we're recommending to the very body you just mentioned, because that's our function, I would like to have that answer before I lock them in to something that is less flexible. I'm looking to protect the taxpayers to do something which would cause the administration less pain and the taxpayers or the legislative body less confusion. So it would be nice to know that before we voted to lock something in.
Thank you very much for that, Lisa. Do we have any other questions from Arnie?
This is one of those what-if questions. Say we got a building stabilization fund, and I think I heard, like, the DPW has to put an addition on one of their buildings. Is that something that would come out of this fund?
Again, that's dependent on the town meeting members and how they would like to spend that money.
Or what I mean is, if town meeting approves it, it would come out of this fund for the DPW to add a section onto a building.
Yes.
And it is based, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. It is based upon the circumstance. Let's say we're getting 3.5% in this fund. And because of our credit rating, we can borrow money at 1.7% to put that addition. At that point in time, we'd rely upon BIZ, bond counsel, and our financial advisor to say, hey, you're going to be negative net 1.5%. We would recommend you not take it out of the stabilization account, keep it in that investment earning account, and borrow money at a cheaper rate. That's why sometimes it's difficult to have a hard, fast policy, because it depends upon the circumstances at the moment.
Thank you. I like that example.
Well, thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 3? Diane?
Thank you, thank you. Just a brief question about the stabilization fund. How long has it been around? I mean, it's not new.
These stabilization funds have been around, pretty much the ones we're looking at right now. They've been around prior to 2015. Other than that, I would have to go back to check all your town meeting warrants.
Okay, so it isn't we're making a new stabilization fund. We're just adding money to a current one.
Right, there's only one new stabilization fund that we are creating, and that will be at the annual town meeting, and that's the capital equipment stabilization.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 3? Dave?
Appreciate that, Vaughn. Thank you. So I'm going to be asking like kind of a commentary kind of question, but before so, I want to preface by saying I do appreciate all the work being done to close out accounts and going very deep into the history of all those article projects to find it, because we're heading into some headwinds on projects that are going to need the best possible interest rate. I'm all in. I get it. I totally do. But as we look at what that number, that 18 million, let's say it is, because it's projected, we don't know what it is actually. Is there a percentage of our general fund that is looked at, 18 million against the $141 million in the general fund? Is it that kind of calculus that's used to determine how we're doing with the bond markets?
Can you repeat that? You're looking
Yeah.
for how much money the bond market's looking for us to have put away?
Yeah, what is the calculus? They look at it and say, oh, that looks pretty good. Yeah, but why is it pretty good? Is it pretty good because it's just a big number? Or is it because it's measured against something like the size of our general fund?
I can answer that, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, Biz.
Thank you, Mr. Calder.
That is a year-to-year policy decision. Given the example I just used, it depends upon the circumstances at the time. When we ask for a policy that says every year we're going to put 5% into our savings account, it's almost like we can't encumber future boards. If we go into a recession, like some are arguing, we're going to put less money, or perhaps even, yes, less money into these accounts. If we have an inflationary period where the cost of goods are so high and interest rates are so low, we may want to put more money into those accounts. So there's no policy you can do that's long-term. That's like saying we're going to buy more stock a year from now. We don't know that. We may be moving into cash a year from now. It depends upon the internal and external environment, how our town is doing, how the state is doing, and now really how the federal government is doing, that'll determine how much money we can afford to set aside into our savings account.
So
what I can tell you is there's a general policy by this board to save, baby, save. And that's based upon feedback from our taxpayers.
So that's our policy, is save, baby, save. Okay, all right. Well, now, I want to just add to that. In the past that I've experienced with free cash, it's always been around 5 million. I've seen it drop down in the 3 to 4 million range. It fluctuates, quite a bit, but not that much. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's always been done with turnbacks plus the kinds of things you've done, where you've looked back and said, oh, what can we close out to kind of get back to that 5 million so we have something there to put into the free cash so we can use it in the following year. And, as stabilization or cash for projects and whatnot. So if we had to drain so much going back, I think the date was like 1995. I think that's how deep it went. How do we go forward with trying to take care of that number? I know that we've done a new thing that we've never seen, which is doing the accounting holdback, and I appreciate that, because I think that solves for part of what I'm saying. So I'm on board with that idea of it, but I just didn't know whether we were going to have more than that available from all of these closed accounts to help level, when we don't have as much turn back, but maybe we can squeeze a few more articles from the past to level it off. Are we out?
I hear what you're asking, David. That office over in the corner, business office, is based upon the past and seeing if we can close out and clean up the balance sheet going back 2 decades. This office on this side is putting in place standard operating procedures to make sure we don't recreate the problems of the past, that we won't be doing a closeout when Biz and I are gone. The accounts will be closed out annually as we close our fiscal year and begin our audit. I want to go back to the very beginning on that in terms of this is a one-time opportunity. This is not going to happen all the time. It's because the books are getting cleaned up. We're not going to be able to close out things from the past. The question that the people in the corner office were asking is, this is a windfall. It's like getting a bonus you never expected. How do we want to position ourselves for the future? I think that's what it's all about. It's nothing more than that. This is a one-time opportunity in closing out these accounts and cleaning up our books to shore up our reserves. And really that's all it about. And how it's spent and what the drawdown is a month-to-month, year-to-year, issue-to-issue that town meeting will have to make a decision on.
Right, so
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Coulter. I want to gently steer the committee back toward Article 3. Thank you, Dave. Deposit the building stabilization.
I just wanted to
fund.
close
Thank
the
you.
loop on the point that I was making. which is what it means is that the accounting holdback is really the only number that's going to put a hedge on what fluctuations happen so that that kind of protects us in the future year, not being able to necessarily have a whole lot of articles from the past to draw on, because it's only 1 year at a time that we're getting that kind of money. Is that a fair statement, I guess?
So, anyway.
Well, what we have to realize is that this is all predicated on how we close the books. And starting off the accountant's holdback is a good way to start. So last year we held back $694,000. Anything we can close out and hold back helps us get a positive free cash and positive retained earnings. That's a simple answer.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 3, Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund? Hearing none. Do we have any questions or comments from the public on Article 3, Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund? Marty, please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Marty West from 2320 Central Street. I was on this committee for 3 years, up until 3 years ago. I was not happy with what we were doing then. We didn't put anything in the Building Stabilization Fund for a few years in a row. The argument was, well, if we put it in the General Stabilization Fund, if we need it for a building, we can use it. The problem is reality sets in, and whenever we need the money for a building, the stuff in the General Stabilization Fund had already gone away, used for other things. So the building's always lost. And that's why we've always paid with debt for the buildings. I'm very happy with the numbers tonight. I'm thrilled. It's the best I've seen them in 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Anzavino, please step forward and identify yourself for the record.
John Anzavino, 25 Ross Ave. While you've been talking, I've done some research here on stabilization. You had questions. It takes majority vote from your legislative body to put money into a fund. It takes a 2/3 vote to take money out. And you actually have one in the annual town meeting to create one. It takes 2/3 of a vote to create it as well. So I just thought I'd offer that to you. Under 5B, yeah, Chapter 45B. That's what I was reading, yeah. That's what I was reading. I'm just offering it to you. Mr. Coulter's already said he's going to talk to council to make sure that's correct. But with that, I do want to say, and I'll just reiterate what Marty said. When you have that one-time shot where you have that much money, now's the time to put it away because you have it. It was unexpected. I think they're doing a great job closing these things out to come up with this money. It's found money, put it away, and have it when you need it. That's all. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Anzavino. Any other questions, comments from the public on Article 3, Deposit to Building Stabilization Fund? Hearing none. Going to Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund. Would you like to present this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Members of the Finance Committee, the public, the town meeting representatives. A deposit to Special Education Fund in May of 2021, I believe it was, the town meeting body voted to establish the Special Education Fund. And at that time, there was a deposit of, and this is your balance right now, 216,414, $216,414. This special education fund has got specific purposes attached to it. And with that, it does have to go to town meeting vote to put the money in. The only way to get money out is by the agreement of the school committee majority and the Board of Selectmen majority. That's how money comes out, and specific purpose only. So if this gets voted on the special education fund, we're proposing $283,586, 283,586.00, which will bring that balance to $500,000. The purpose of bringing this to $500,000 is we do know one of the things that are the special purpose that we can use it for is homeless transportation and special education transportation, things like that. So we need to ensure that should we have an issue, that the school department can still provide the valuable service to the residents of the town.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund? Lisa.
It looked like the town manager wanted to say something. Okay, I just wanted to understand, I think I missed it. Did you say the special purpose of this was for transportation, the specific purpose?
I believe there's 3 different purposes, and I will be more than happy to forward that article that was voted in 2021 by the town meeting representatives. I'll forward that to the chair so he can share that with the body, but it's very specific. So if you look at the town meeting, May of 2021, you will find the absolute list. I believe it's 3 items. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
So is it my understanding we don't know what the purposes are?
No, we do
I
know
mean,
what the purposes
for
are.
tonight, I don't know what they are.
So I think I can
Without
help.
doing research, is that the answer?
No, I think I can help. The statute provides what it can be used for. It could be out-of-district services, it could be out-of-district transportation, and it could be for residential purposes, for children who need residential services. You can't just label something special education and use it for anything you want. The statute does define special education expenditures. I do want to make a point, and if you'll indulge me for just a second, Mr. Chairman, it has to do with special ed, but it's a little bit outside that realm. You voted last night, but strike that. I heard the superintendent present last week, and he made very clear, and I appreciated his candor, that it's almost impossible to balance their budget not knowing the uncontrolled special ed expense that's going to hit their budget. And that's why we're proud. The selectmen voted to increase that line item. The selectmen are going to propose to the school committee, and I have already floated it to the school committee and to the superintendent, that based upon the vote you took last night to fund the school budget at the level you funded it at, if the local aid resolution comes in higher than that, we're asking that that money go right to this stabilization account and not to the general budget. And that way, it will allow the superintendent and his administration to be more certain in what their budget needs are from year to year, because they can control with the stabilization account, they can control the irregularities and the spikes in special ed. So that if they do get additional money, it don't go into their general fund, it go into the stabilization fund, so that they can control, they have absolute control over their budget. So I know the superintendent and a member of the school committee thought it was a good idea. It'll come down to a full vote of the board of selectmen, what they're going to recommend to town meeting, what you're going to recommend at town meeting, but we won't know what the new revenue is until the local aid resolution comes out.
All right, thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee?
I do, just to
Caroline.
clarify, I looked up the Special Education Stabilization Fund. It can be used for basically 3 purposes. They're all unanticipated or unbudgeted, but unbudgeted because they're unanticipated, and they are out-of-district tuition, transportation, and recovery high school tuition.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the committee on Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund? Jonna.
Thank you, Vaughn. I'm just curious, where the 2 hotels have closed, has that had an impact on how much need there is for the monies in this account, please? Thank you.
There is absolutely no relation.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund? Carolyn.
I just have a quick one on what you mentioned, through you, Mr. Chair, to the town manager. If additional money on the revenue sheet comes in that's higher than what we've used from House 1 to balance the budget, and will you be amending this motion to add more money into the special ed stabilization account?
This vote will have already been taken by the Select Board, by the Finance Committee, and that would come to a fall town meeting. Correct.
All right, thank you very much. Dave?
Thank you, Vaughn, through you. I remember a little bit about this article from 2021, but, with my feeble memory, there were a couple things that I remember in at least the deliberation on it, was that turnbacks from the schools had something to do with the number, that it wasn't, that we were looking at that as the source to say how much should we put in. Do we know how much of the free cash certification came from the school's turnback?
I'd be more than happy to look, and the free cash certification from the school, we closed out a lot of purchase orders within the school as well. I would have to look. I do not have that figure off the top of my head.
I appreciate that. So that was one of the items that came up in all the discussions about this article in the past, that what would we use, and it was a natural fit, and that the maximum was 2% of the school budget. So if we're at like 68 million, it would be up to maximum. The account can only hold up to 2% of the school's budget.
I would have to look at the motion that was voted by town meeting, and I do not believe that was in the motion.
Yeah,
So you can
that's
fund
my
this-
memory. My memory could be, weak. Who knows? But that's my recollection of it. And I guess my last question is, how much has been used from this account since 2021? Has it ever been? It sounded like when you opened that it's always been the same.
It has never been accessed.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the committee on Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund? Hearing none. Any questions or comments from the public on Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund? Cynthia, please identify yourself for the record.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. Just a comment. When we're talking about educating our children, we usually think K through 12. But most of you probably know that if you are a special education student, your education can start at 2 years, 9 months, and it extends to your 22nd birthday. And we just don't know when these folks arrive. And the day they arrive with an ed plan, they're entitled to all the services on that ed plan, although there's a sharing component until they've been here for a full school year. So it's a long haul for the town, and it's a longer haul for the parents.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments from the public on Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund? Hearing none, we will move to Article 5, Deposit to Other Post-Employment Benefit Trust Fund.
The other post-employment benefit trust fund is one of the issues that is repeatedly brought up by Moody's, that we need to be more serious on how we're funding, because right now, as of February 26, 2025, we have 4, 5, 6, 9, 5, 9.08. That is the current balance. Now, we have a two-part here on this type of fund. In the annual town meeting, we have an article that will be depositing $100,000 into that account, 100,000, which will make that account, should it pass at the annual town meeting, 5, 5, 6, 9, 5, 9.08. At this annual, at the special town meeting, we would like to put in 1, 4, 3, 0, 4, 0.92. That will give us a principal balance of $700,000. And again, this is to show that we are serious about our OPEB. It will go into our management letters. The auditors will be very happy to see this. The bond council will be happy to see this, and anybody who bids on any town loans will be happy to see this because we are showing that we are serious about our intention. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 5? Lisa?
This is just a general question. Every year, do we have just a general, I'm not looking for an exact amount, that our retired employees actually draw down? Is that what this is for?
No.
Can you further describe that then?
An OPEB trust fund is a trust fund. We do not draw down on this. We continue to build up our OPEB trust. If we end up in a situation where we need to transfer money to cover our retirement issues, such as health insurance, then it would go to town meeting vote in order to spend this. It is not something you spend as a general rule of thumb. It's something you keep. And when your OPEB is fully funded, then you can remove the funding to another avenue, which will probably never happen.
Okay, I guess that was a follow-up question. What is the fully funded trust fund look like? What would our, and again, I'm not looking for an exact, fully funded trust fund amount be in the ballpark?
It is an impossibility for any community to fully fund an OPEB trust fund. As of June 30, 2024, the town's obligation for that year was $143 million. And just like at the post office was required to fund their future liabilities. The federal government now says the post office does not have to do that, so it makes your balance sheet look better. So this is what we're facing, but we will never, I think the only community who has fully funded was either Dover or Wellesley, and that was many, many years ago, and they had fully funded. Some communities take out loans to fund these. This is not a position that Stoughton will or can go to. So to compare what we owe to the balance is somewhat immaterial.
Well, thank you very much for that. Mr. Coulter, do you have something to add to this?
Yes, sir. Very briefly, I just want to tie this out to the discussion we had earlier on the operating budget and hiring people. One of the reasons the three of us have been very, very reluctant to hire people. In fact, we've got 5 fewer employees than we have. Next year, we'll have 5 fewer employees than we have now, and next year, we'll have 19 fewer employees than we had 2 years ago, is because it's not just the $22,000 a year it costs for the health insurance that is in your operating budget. It is this OPEB obligation. If we hire people and they retire on Stoughton's watch, we owe that obligation until they die. And so the decisions we make today to increase staff will have an impact for decades and decades to come. That's why we're very, very big on consolidating positions, paying people a little bit more to take on more responsibility and hire fewer people. The biggest expense is not what we pay them in the current year, it's what we'll owe to them for the rest of their lives.
Well, thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions? Carolyn?
I thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to, I just got a little confused. So we have these obligations to fund the retired health insurance every year, and we generally fund them through the operating budget. But this fund is for if something happens and we can't, it's like the insurance fund that they can go and collect on. Is that a way to describe it?
It's a fund, once we vote all these things, we'll be in a good financial position. If we have an issue and we have to draw down funds from OPEB trust, you can draw it down for health insurance. So several years ago, if you had built up your OPEB trust fund and you had gotten into a little bit of a issue with your health insurance, you could have voted X amount of dollars out of this trust fund to cover the health insurance. And I have been in a community where they had to do that at one time. So that's why you build these up, so you can use it for the purposes that are intended.
So it wouldn't have had to necessarily have been retired health insurance if we pulled it out for that situation, but just for health insurance in general is covered through this. So
Yes.
it's okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we can point to examples, historical examples from our trust fund where people decades ago came to work for us for a day and then left, a week, a month, and we owe them an obligation for the rest of their lives.
Well, thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the committee? Diane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About how many retirees are under this insurance plan?
It'd be every employee over the course of history who retired from the town of Stoughton, who is still alive, and this is not something that I would have a count on. So, sorry about that. Maybe we can look at that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you, Vaughn, to you. Some of those benefits, you mentioned health, it's a pretty straightforward number. You know, it is what it is. You have a cost, and you owe it for the retired. Are there pension aspects of it also? Aren't we talking about their, no?
No.
It's
This is not pension. This is strictly health insurance benefits.
Health only, okay. And my other question is, isn't Norfolk County involved with managing our account, our trust fund, and
No.
and
No.
only on retirement? So that's a separate topic outside of OPEB.
Correct.
Okay, and final question is, we mentioned the bond market a lot tonight because of these, central to a lot of this is to get control of our interest rates and so on. But I mentioned this in the last go-around when we did it for the annual. I'm going to bring it up again just because I'd like to understand isn't there a calculus that the people you sit down with to discuss what kind of bond rating should we have? There's got to be some kind of formula that says, here's what you should be at based on your town. This is your number you need to be at, not like a random on the fly. This year, why don't you bump it up a little bit to the 700, you know? Isn't there a calculus that goes into it?
I'd love to. Go ahead.
You'd love to? Go ahead.
So Biz and Mark and I met with our bonding agency and our bond counsel several months ago, and we learned a lot. Much of the data and much of the determination comes from analysis of data, ratios, financial ratios, debt to equity, and so forth and so on. But the most important measurement is qualitative risk. The amount of risk, because what they're doing, Moody's is making a recommendation to the bondholders, whether they would or would not invest in this organization. And there's a lot of towns, of the 351 cities in town, that can't get debt because they're taking on too much risk. So they want to see that year to year, we're making decisions that give comfort to the bondholders. So, but only half of it, half their analysis, their opinion, is based upon data. The other half is based upon analysis of the risk and the management of the organization.
Yeah, go on.
Thank you for that, Mr. Coulter. Yes,
Can
Dave.
do you one.
Do you
Yeah,
have a
so
question on
think
this?
that- yeah, that's. I want to just kind of close the loop on it. That's kind of what I do. All right, so we're at $243,040.92. That's from the annual combined with the special. That's the new number to get us to 700, because that's the math I'm doing in front of me. Is that going to be a like number that we're going to anticipate for future years? Because we've been so much lower in the past. Is that going to be a kind of like a threshold that we're going to be maintaining?
What we have committed to bond counsel and to the board, through the Select Board is that we will be committing out of our budget each year $100,000 to go into this fund. Should we have excess free cash, then we will be considering putting more money into this.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the committee on Article 5, deposit to other post-employment benefit trust fund? Hearing none. Questions or comments from the public on Article 5, deposit to other post-employment benefit trust fund? Hearing none. We'll move to Article 6, which is close prior year fund deficits. Oh, Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a kind of a hypothetical question, if I may, around all these stabilization funds. Is that okay? Ooh. Can you hear me now? So I just wanted to find out if I could ask a hypothetical question about all the stabilization funds. Is that all right?
What was the question?
Could I ask a hypothetical question about kind of the collective stabilization funds that we've been talking about tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess. I'm just confused where you are on that, but okay, yeah, I'll allow it.
I just wanted to get to the end of all the stabilization funds. So I really appreciate the explanation of like, these are equivalent to, I have to decide how much to put in my 401k versus my 529 for college savings versus a health savings account, things like that. And I thought there was a really good comment from the room about kind of not having done this in the past. So I guess the question is, if hypothetically we had found another $1 million, would your recommendation be to distribute that $1 million kind of at a pro rata basis into the funds that we have today, or is there some other fund, some other savings that we should be considering?
Well, that is a hypothetical, and as per the recommendations from the Department of Revenue Division of Local Services, you only want to use your free cash to fund one-time items, which would be capital or deposits into stabilization. Each year we would be examining, well, how much money did we get? What are our capital expenses that we have to cover? And what do we have remaining? And yes, there will be going forward. What are we going to do? We're not going to talk percentages. We're not going to say it's going to be X, Y, and Z, because everything changes every year. But this is and should be on the docket going forward, that we continue to save money.
And you don't feel like there's another type of stabilization fund that we should be considering? You're happy with what we have at the moment?
At this point in time, no. I believe that we're in a good position on the stabilization funds, but as we go forward, there may be something else that comes up, but we have pretty much everything covered as far as buildings, capital expense, general stabilization, special education, OPEB trust, and
Cruise fund?
sorry, sometimes you just got to go like that. So yeah, general stabilization. Your general stabilization, they want it to be roughly 5% of your annual budget. So we're well above the 5% right now, because our annual budget this year is $140 million. So we will be reaching $10 million. So I watch the laws, and I also watch the best practices in order to advise the town manager and the select board on what the recommendations would be.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that.
I think that's great,
Article
Mr.
6.
Chairman, that she calls it advice. It's more of a directive.
Thank you. We're moving to Article 6, closed prior year fund deficits. Would you like to present this?
Sure. Okay, so prior year fund deficits is, we are requesting from free cash $90,809.92. 90809.92. And if you look at page 4 of the special town meeting warrant, what happens each year when we go to the Department of Revenue to have our free cash certified, we have to provide them with every single balance sheet in the town. And in this case, we have roughly 400 balance sheets. So out of the 400 balance sheets, we have the projects, the fund numbers and the projects that have been repeatedly been in deficit. And in order for us to satisfy these deficits, we have to fund them. So the only way I can fund them at this time is via free cash. So for instance, if you look at FY19, CDBG, CV, CARES, and that's 3/4 of the way down the page, that's $1,000. That's pretty much been outstanding since 2019. So once we satisfy these deficits, this comes off the deficit list, and this will help roll into our undesignated fund or our beginning free cash balance for the end of this fiscal year.
Well, thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 6, close prior year fund deficits? Lisa.
Okay, I'm going to go backwards on this one. The last thing you just said, if we fund this, just using the $1,000 example, you're saying currently on the balance sheet, it's in a negative, is this like a checking account type thing that's in a negative balance? And this article and this one piece of it is trying to bring it to a zero state?
Municipal accounting is called fund accounting. So it would be its individual checking account, so to speak. And this is just phase one of the cleanup that has to occur. So every single day I'm looking at accounts trying to analyze, well, where are we? Do we have any other deficits that I can manage by not having free cash be hit or a deficit be hit? So I cannot find a like balance on the book that I can transfer it to. So the only way that I can satisfy this and put $90,000 back in the coffers through free cash is to do it this way.
All right, thank you.
So is this negative, does this represent overspending and we need to clean up the book? When you say deficit, to me, that's throwing something into a negative position. So that's what I'm looking for clarification on. And that you just don't want to manage these as rightly should.
Excuse me?
I'm saying you don't want to have to manage an account that's in a negative position. That's why we're putting money into it. I'm trying to understand, is that what this article is doing? I'm trying to understand if each of these funds, when you say are in a deficit, is in a negative position.
That is what deficit, the definition of a deficit is a negative balance, correct?
Okay, and is this article looking to put money into all these individual funds so they're no longer in deficit and we're taking that money from free cash?
That is correct.
And then is the goal then to close these funds accounts so they don't have to be managed anymore?
That is correct.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Elliot.
Just a quick one. These missing, I won't say missing funds, the funds that, here, are we paying interest on any of them?
These are non-interest bearing accounts. This is just a checkbook that was overdrawn.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that, Elliot. Any other questions from the committee? Heidi.
So I feel like I'm going to beat a dead horse, but here we go. So these things have already been paid for. They're already in our possession. They just haven't been funded correctly or adequately.
Well, as the previous speaker said, or Ms. Lyon said, they are overdrawn. Now, my job is to audit the books and find out what happened in the past so I can make the future better. What I have found is some of these accounts, revenue came in, but it went into the wrong grant. So I have to go back in and I have to look at 300 or 400 accounts, analyze each one. My primary is, well, what's in deficit? What has a like title to it? What was open around the same time? So I can say, all right, this should be going with this. For instance, last year you had a $180,000 Green Communities grant that was in deficit that came off of your free cash. However, you also had a Green Communities grant that had the exact same positive in it. So logic from an accounting standpoint is, this is 180, this is 180, they go together. So that 180 put money back into our free cash. So that's the analysis that I have to do every single day to get the town of Stoughton in a better position. And things will change as we go forward in all these accounts. The Munis system is a little bit tricky, but we will physically be closing these accounts on the books so nobody can access them anymore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coulter.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, this is the other side of the good news. The good news, the cleanup of the balance sheet created $12.7 million. This couple of $100,000 is cleaning up accounts that weren't necessarily overdrawn, but in most cases, they were grants, where the money was allocated to the wrong account, which left this one overdrawn. Doesn't mean the vendor has been paid, or it's a payable, or it's outstanding. It's a bookkeeping issue, and Biz has said from the very beginning, her job, her mission, her objective is in the next year or two to have these books so clean, and that when these two, the other two accountants who are younger, take over in the future, they're not dealing with the same challenges that we're dealing with right now. So this is really cleanup, just like the other part that generated $12.7 million.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the committee on Article 6, closed prior? Diane? All right, great, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Biz, for doing all this. I think disheartening to find out that we were sort of overdrawing all of these grants over the years. It'd be like overdrawing your checkbook, pretty much. So is there a fail-safe now that when we get further grants that no one, if it's for $10,000, someone can't write a $12,000 check?
We have changed the procedure and policy on how grants are going into the system. They now have a cutoff date on the grant, and they also have a revenue budget in the grant. The revenue budgets were never in the system.
Okay.
So I also have departments not just looking at their expenditure budget, because accounting is a lot more than your expense budget. It's also your revenue budget.
Right.
So they have to run the report showing the revenue that's been budgeted, the revenue that's come in, the expense budgeted, and the expense that's been paid out to give us an accurate balance of what's going on. So there are controls in place, and I couldn't be in this position, neither could the town of Stoughton without the staff that we currently have.
So in their, I hate to, Munis drawdown, they will know exactly how much is there, and we hopefully won't go through any more of this.
Yes. Well, I can't say we won't go through any more of this, because sometimes you do miss stuff, especially with this size budget and the amount of accounts that we have, but there's much better controls. And you will see more of this stuff in the next year or two as we continue to clean up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you very much, Diane. Any other questions or comments from the committee on Article 6, closed prior year fund deficits? Hearing, yes, Mr. Coulter.
Mr. Chairman, thank
Green
you for
light,
this.
yes.
Just a note to you're retiring, I think Diane's retiring, David's retiring, to the newer members. What Biz just explained is at the very core of this cleanup thing, and I think all the members should know this. In municipalities, when they get grants, big grants, everybody celebrates and everybody takes a bow, right? That's the beginning of the responsibility. The grant has to be managed. And what happened all those years that people were looking for revenue to cover structural deficits, there may have actually been a case where you got $1 million grant, and the grant over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, wasn't touched. The money was charged to the department, to the operating account, because there may not have been the management of the money. So although all the bills were paid, and although the grant value wasn't exceeded, it may have been booked to the wrong account, and there wasn't any cleanup. So the good news is the cleanup is giving us revenue, and the not necessarily bad news, but the cleanup here is to get things into the right bucket. I think the analogy of an overdrawn checking account gives us the wrong look. All the bills were paid, but it may have been paid by the wrong account. So you've got a structural deficit in one account, and you've got an unexplained surplus in another account. Here in that corner office, the people who are managing it for biz have set up systems so that the management of the money that the state or federal government gives us is all going in the right buckets. We're going to get on Friday, tomorrow, the signed contract for the $2 million for the community center. The accounts are already set up. The staff has already been trained. The accounts have already been distributed as to what every dollar that gets spent on that goes into. And every day when they take a draw, they'll know what's left in the grant. Over the past 20 years, it seems like they didn't have time to get that done. It's getting done now, and I'm just so proud of this whole staff in that corner for what they've done for this town. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Coulter. Any other questions from the committee on Article 6, closed prior year fund deficits? Hearing none. Any questions or comments from the public? Article 6, closed prior year fund deficits. Hearing none, we will move to Article 7, which is transfer to the South Elementary Project. Would you like to present this, please?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair, members of the Finance Committee, the public, and the town meeting members. Transfer to the South Elementary Project. As we know, there is a ballot question out there for South Elementary, and we are preparing, should this ballot question go through, we would like to transfer from the open high school account, which has been completed for a number of years now, $1,011,038.48. 1011-03848. And that comes from the project 10102. Secondly, we have, and these are borrowing articles, by the way. The first one is debt excluded borrowing, and we have to follow the rules for debt excluded borrowing. We can only use surplus and debt exclusion to put it back into a debt excluded project. Second is Article 40 of the May 2015 West School Doors and Windows. This was a general obligation borrowing, not a debt exclusion, and this also had an MSBA component to it. The value remaining is $450,959.37. Again, $450,959.37, and the project number on that is 10033. Again, this has to be allocated to a like project, and that like project would be this type of project where it is it has the same life value, and we have to stick to the same life value. So we are requesting to, in anticipation, and I want to be very clear, should this not go through, the school does not go through, this will be withdrawn, okay? But we are trying to be proactive so we don't have to deal with this at a later date. So the total value is $1,461,997.85. And again, it's being proactive. And if the school does not go through, then the article on transfers do not go through as well.
Well, thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from the committee on Article 7? Chet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just mentioned, Biz, you just mentioned that if it does not pass, this article is going to be withdrawn, but the money's still going to be there. Can that be used for other school projects? Because this is all for school borrowing, right? Is that correct? Obviously, it is.
There's certain rules that we have to follow. So an excluded debt project, which was the high school, or debt exclusion, however you want to say it, that would have to be used for a debt excluded project. We could not use it for any other project that was not debt excluded unless town meeting voted it so. And if they voted so, then the value now becomes a general obligation debt and is no longer debt excluded. And that is something, should we go there down the road, that will be something that we will make sure that we have bond counsel involved and not make an arbitrary decision. It doesn't necessarily have to go to a school. And that's the same with both of them. The second one is general obligation bond. That is not debt excluded. It only has to go to a project with the same lifespan. So hypothetically, totally, let's say the town hall, we want to put in a whole new lighting system and we need a new roof. It's going to cost us $450,000 that we would typically borrow for. So we would go to town meeting and we would say, we would like to take this $450,000 hypothetically and do it to make renovations to the town hall. Because it's general obligation, it would have a lifespan of roughly the same, doors, windows, et cetera. So that's how that works.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Chet. Lisa, you have a question?
The quick question is, just take the first one, the $1 million. Is that just appropriated money and not actually encumbered, meaning have we actually borrowed this money, or it's just town meeting approved the money and it wasn't, do you understand what I'm?
There's two different things
Right.
that you're speaking about. One would be on the annual town meeting, we are voting to rescind authorized not issued. Authorized not issued means we authorized borrowing, but we are not taking it, so we're rescinding that borrowing because it's for a specific purpose. This particular money, the $1,011,000, is actually cash on hand.
So we're paying interest on this, on the debt?
Oh, yeah.
Of this?
Yes, this has been outstanding for a number of years as far as the school project is concerned. And I want to be very, very clear. When you have this size project, you have to be cognizant of your cash flow, when to borrow. And it's very easy to borrow too much. This is not necessarily too much because of what was going on at the time, change orders, et cetera. So yes, we are paying for this. It's already borrowed.
And just one final question. Would this be able to be used hypothetically to, like, the fire station? That's a partial debt exclusion, because I know we won't go in but
The
would
only
that
way
be?
that we could do that is for town meeting to revote, and it would be a 65-35 split.
Because
So-
of the way that it was taken?
Right, it's not an easy process, so if the school goes through, or we have another debt exclusion project that's 100% debt exclusion, that's the easiest way to deal with this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Mark?
Yes, through you or to whoever can maybe help me out on this or help everyone out. So, coming up very shortly, we're going to have an annual town meeting, we're going to have a special town meeting, and we're going to have a special town meeting, right?
Well, you have your annual elections, which are April 8th, and that's where the ballot vote is. And then you have a special town meeting within your annual, which are both in May. Other than that, there's no other meetings scheduled for the remainder of the year.
So this here is what we're doing tonight is for a special town meeting.
Yes, this is for the
Within
special
the
town
annual.
meeting.
We already did this special for the school.
Yes, sir.
All right.
We've got a lot of special things going on here.
I know, so that's why I was getting lost. I'm like, so how are we going to know? So the annual will go first before we can go to the special then?
Other way around.
Yeah, it's up to the moderator. Usually what happens is you will open your annual, and then you'll pause your annual and then open your special. That's normally how it works.
But by that time of town meeting, we'll know, because of the election, on whether it's passed.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I was getting all confused because of all these specials and all that stuff. So wanted to get everybody, I just wanted to get cleared on which, thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Mark. Jonna, do you have a question on this?
Thank you, Vaughn. I was speaking to someone in the building committee, and they had made me be under the belief that the ballot question would allow for some of the debt to be paid inside the budget with the current design and the MSBA grant. Is that true?
That decision does not fall to the building committee. That decision falls to the select board.
Okay, but whether it falls to them or not, is that an option? Is it a viable option? Is there viability to that option?
Anything in the world is possible. It doesn't mean it's recommended.
All right, thank you for that.
That's not much of an answer. Is there? Can I just put just one more shot at it?
Yeah, if you have a question on Article 7, yeah, feel free.
I think I can answer it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Thank you.
The selectmen have not taken up a vote, nor do they intend to take up a vote to do anything within the levy. Does that help?
All right, thank you. Yes, Mr.
Information,
Calder.
sir?
Thank you.
I just want, and I am speaking to the public now, because I know that the Finance Committee is likely aware of it. There's an additional source of revenue that the Board of Selectmen passed a resolution at their last meeting. Believe it or not, 10 years after the school was built, we're expecting the final $2 million payment, $2 million plus or minus $50,000, that is due any time now. The Select Board cannot issue or direct that money anywhere. That's going to be up to town meeting. But they passed a resolution, which I believe was unanimous. I may be wrong. I think it was unanimous. It was? Thank you, John. That says when that money comes in, their request of town meeting is that money be earmarked toward the South School project. So between that $2 million plus or minus and this 1.4, again, they heard the taxpayers who want to lower the tax impact, particularly on seniors, of this school project. So between that resolution and this measure here at town meeting, the expectation is they'll be able to lower the debt exposure by $3.4 million. And on top of that, they passed a second resolution that said when those two schools come under the care, custody, and control of the Select Board, which is the law, they passed a resolution telling future policymakers it is their intent to put the property out to bid with restrictions that say what the town will allow to build there. So it's not a multi-purpose playground or whatever. And that is expected to raise another $5 to $8 million, which would go towards reducing the debt for the South School. So by action of the Select Board, you're looking at anywhere between 3.8 and $9 million to $12 million of new revenue going towards the reduction of debt for the South School project. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that information, Mr. Coulter. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 7? Heidi.
Just a question on where the $450,000 came from. Is that when, because I remember when the West School got their doors and windows, we voted on that, but then they received a grant. And so is this like what we allocated before the grant covered everything for the windows? And then I think I got sunsetted.
I believe we had, well, you can only sunset certain articles with the money, because there's actually cash on hand. You need to reallocate those, and that's the point with that. I believe the project was either 2.2 or $2.5 million, and part of that was based on MSBA grant, as well as funding through borrowing. So this would be the borrowing aspect of it, what we had remaining.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for that. No, Elliot? Okay. Oh, okay, perfect. I love it when someone steals someone's question. Now, the questions from the committee on Article 7, transfer to South Elementary project. Lisa, you have another question on this?
Yep, it's probably directed to the town manager, just picking up on a couple of things he just
It's
said.
about Article 7, though, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
So when you were just talking about, I know I've heard we don't earmark money, so when you just brought up the earmarking, I'm just looking for clarification on that as point one. And point two, when we say money comes in to reduce the debt, how does that associate to the assessment that the debt exclusion would impose upon the taxpayers? Because there's a difference there.
Two points. Two great
want-
questions.
Yep. So reducing the debt doesn't really mean it's alleviating the taxpayer burden, because the taxpayer burden, I'm asking this question, is that assessment is as of a snapshot point in time, so correct?
You raise a great point. Biz broke my right rib when I said pay down the debt. We can't pay down the debt because of bond covenants, right? Once you borrow it, they want to know you're going to pay it down. My word should have been avoid debt at that point in time. So that's the real intent.
So you're saying reduce borrowing.
Reduce borrowing. Reduce the borrowing.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. But the most important point, we cannot earmark. That's illegal. What the board filed, and it's the reason they did it this way is because it's illegal to earmark. They put out a resolution, it's non-binding, that says that if we were in this position, this board right now to vote on it, with all the facts, this is what we would do. We would avoid debt for the South School. You know, they're not bringing it before town meeting because they can't. We can't earmark money to future boards. So it's just a resolution that states their intent and their wishes, given the information they have right now. That's different than the $2 million. That's different than the money that Biz is closing out. That you can use to apply at the special town meeting. That's different than an earmark. What was proposed is that future new growth go towards the school within the levy. That is illegal. Yet continues to be proposed by one of the candidates for selectmen.
You cannot earmark revenue.
Cannot earmark revenue.
But thank you. Any other questions from the committee on Article 7, transfer to South Elementary project? Here, Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. So I know that this all has to be voted on, but if I understand correctly, we have the 1.4 million you're talking about. There's the 2 million that the select board. I'm not going to touch the money from the schools because that's sort of more in the future. But if my math's correct, I think we were talking about ballpark 65 million for borrowing for the school. So what you're saying is that 3.4 would be, you just subtract that total from what you'd have to borrow. Is that correct? Well,
That is absolutely the intention. So if we know that when we get the final MSBA payment, we'll have to go to town meeting to be voted to use for the new school. We just cannot automatically put it there. And that's the intent. And the intent would be they cannot go above the budget that was voted. They would have to stay within the guidelines so that $3-4 million would be used to not have to borrow.
okay. And just a follow-up, so what that means for the typical taxpayer is if the debt exclusion were to pass, I think what I remember was it was 55 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. What we're saying is that then what they'd actually have to pay would be less than the 55 cents per 1,000.
Well, the assessed value, you'd be borrowing less money, yes. So theoretically, yes, it is correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Article 7, transfer to South Elementary project. Lisa, you have something else on this? Article 7.
Yes, I want to caution everyone, just as the former vice chair of the Finance Committee pointed out, I believe it was last year, that just saying something doesn't make it so, and the ballot question is on April 8th, okay? When the debt comes in, in other words, there's no guarantee that any of this is just a hope and a wish and a dream of what takes place. There's no guarantee of protecting the taxpayer on
All right,
that
thank you
money.
very much. Any other questions, comments on Article 7, transfer to South Elementary Project? Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Vaughn, through you. So the borrowing portions, so like the 1,011,000, as well as the $2 million that's also being moved from the project, from the high school project. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't want to make it. I'd rather have her get the candy and be happy when she answers this. So, yeah. Have some candy. The point is that those dollars are already being paid by the taxpayers, correct? The 1 million as well as the 2 million that was just put in by the select board. Those are monies that the town is already paying a bond on. It's already coming out of debt exclusions from the past that we are funding these dollars. It's just shifting from just paying off debt that's not being used to all of a sudden it's becoming used. Is that right?
Chapter 44, Section 20 does not allow you to take this type of funding to pay down debt. It has to be used for a like purpose. So the intention is to take this money that's been sitting on the book for about, I don't know, 5-10 years and utilize this for a project that is potentially going to be voted. That is what the purpose of this is for. And yes, we are paying debt payments on this. Part of the debt payment is in the excluded debt for the high school, and the other part of the debt is in the general fund operating budget. So there is debt out there that we're paying interest against.
Excuse me, I'm almost done. Then none of the sources described, because I think there was as many as 3, but I think there's 2 that are on the table. One is added money from the other night, and then this money, which is right in the article, right, to get to the 3,500. There's two different sources coming up quickly, and then other money that may come in down the road.
I would like to be very, very clear. The only money we're dealing with is the $1.4 million here. Anything else is not up for debate and comment tonight, although it was brought up, because we have not received that funding, and that would be a future town meeting and not equivalent
All right,
to
so
tonight.
that's not germane to any of this.
No, sir.
All right, so you said that you can't pay down other debt, but do we have a prepayment
We are not allowed to
ability
do.
on the?
No. We are a municipality. We go out to bonding. It's not like you go out and buy a car and you have extra money and you can pay down your debt. Because we go out to bonding, all of our borrowing is bid on, and we are restricted on our paybacks. We voted at the last town meeting and through the Board of Selectmen that anything under $50,000 that we had cash on hand, we could use that to pay down debt. Anything above that, no. You have to reallocate to a like purpose.
Okay, and on the 450, that's different. That can be closed out, and then it would be different than the treatment that you described on a debt exclusion, correct?
Debt exclusion debt has to go to a debt excluded project.
That I got. Yeah, now on the 450.
Any $450,000. Let's say we have to replace all the windows in Town Hall. It's $450,000. Then we could do that. But
No, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't phrase the question. So if we did not pass this and the 450 was money that we wanted to sink back into either free cash or give back as, or?
No, the only
That's
way,
borrowed, right? That's borrowed money right there?
as I stated
But it's not
earlier,
debt excluded.
It is
inside the budget.
borrowed money. You can only use borrowed money for a like project. This is not closed out to the general fund at all.
Right, but it's as an inside the budget article type borrowing. It has the same rules that apply to the debt excluded one you just went over. It has the same limitations. You have to use it as, you have to keep borrowing against it. It doesn't have.
We're not borrowing against it.
I mean,
We
you have to
already
keep,
the
you have
cash
to
on hand.
reapply it, or it sits on the books and we're stuck having to pay it.
It sits on the books until we make a decision what we're going to do with that
It can
funding.
never, that side
No,
of it
sir.
cannot be closed out with a payoff. You can't pay that off early.
No, sir, and that's what I previously stated.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the committee? Article 7, transfer to South Elementary project. Carolyn?
Yeah, I think just to kind of follow up on what the previous speaker said, to kind of make sure that I didn't get confused. All right, so this article, we have the money. So we're not borrowing anything, and we cannot apply it to reduce borrowing that we've already done or to reduce potential future borrowing. But what we can do is apply it to the South School project so that we don't have to borrow this roughly $1.52 million. And if this doesn't pass, the money that was borrowed that we have on hand from the high school can only go for another full debt exclusion project. And the money that we have from the Wilkins West Elementary School windows could only go to it could go to another project, but would have like a similar lifespan. So we could use it to replace windows in Town Hall, but we couldn't go use it to buy a police cruiser.
If we were going to borrow this type of funding, I think went out for 20 years. So you'd have to have the lifespan to be 20 years.
All right, so we wouldn't borrow a police cruiser for 20 years.
Exactly.
So we wouldn't use that type of money there, but we could use it for another project that we would borrow for 20 years,
Yes.
which would
All right.
likely be some sort of.
Yes, all of the points that you
type
made were
thing.
absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you. And then all the other money that you're talking about when you reference, or when the
Hypothetical.
not you.
Yeah.
When the
That's
town
all
manager
hypothetical.
referenced was the hypothetical money that you're talking about from the MSBA would be additional cash on hand that would be dealt with once we have the cash on hand from the MSBA.
Correct.
You good with that? All right. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Article 7, transfer to the South Elementary project? Dave, you have a final question on this?
Yeah, actually, I don't know, maybe. This is what is hard for me, because usually when you borrow something, you have an item. You have something that you borrowed for. You have a tangible thing. You bought a car, you pay it off, and then you have the asset at the end of that term, whatever depreciated value is left of it. There's a thing, right, at the end of a term of something you borrowed for. So in this situation, as we're paying off loans from, let's say, the remainder of a high school, that money is not in the school, but it sits there being paid off. Is there a principal building up as we pay off that debt that's available as cash at the end that could be used for school projects?
I think you misunderstand
Well-
that we actually have cash on hand. This is cash on hand. We aren't doing additional borrowing. This is cash on hand that we want to reallocate.
Oh, so this is the cash,
project. Yes.
this is the cash already, but
Yes.
okay, so we're taking all the principal now because we're already paying principal and interest over time?
This is not, no. You're confusing a debt payment with a cash on hand.
Right.
So back up a step. You borrowed $500,000 to build your house. You have a mortgage for $500,000. Your house is built, you have $50,000 remaining in your pocket, but your loan is restricted that you can only use that money to do future improvements on another house or on that house.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to do it. But you do not in any way, shape, or form confuse your personal life or a personal business with municipality,
Right.
because it is totally
Right, but it's the
different.
full value of what was principal at the beginning of the note is there as this cash on hand. That's well, I'm trying to make sure I understand what that number came from. It came from an amount that was borrowed at the beginning, right?
We borrowed, let's say, $55 million, okay?
Right.
Out of the $55 million, we didn't spend it all. We have $1 million remaining. It's got nothing to do with principal. It's got nothing to do with interest. This is what we have remaining from what we had borrowed.
Right,
And
so it's
there's
the initial loan amount that was taken out. That was taken out minus the cost of the project.
I believe that we had made that point as well as Carolyn, so there's really nothing else that I can explain
No, I
on
understand
that.
now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the explanation. Any other questions from the committee on Article 7? Transfer South Elementary Project. Hearing none. Questions or comments from the public? Article 7, transfer to the South Elementary Project. Hearing none. Okay, we've completed all the articles on the special town meeting. I am listening very closely for a motion to close
the public hearing.
Elliot and Diane, you're the second. So Elliot had the motion to close. Diane had the second on that. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Public hearing is now closed. Thank you very much for that. And now we will review and discuss special May, because we want to be clear on which special we're discussing, special May town meeting warrant articles. So we can go through each of these, and we will be looking for a motion. We will have discussion, and then we will take votes on this. We will get this done. The maker of the motion will get to speak on this. They will be the first one to speak on it. After that, everyone will have the opportunity to speak before anybody speaks the second time. Everyone here will have the opportunity to speak up to 2 times. That's the process we will follow. Hopefully that's clear. Are we looking at the articles for the special? Yes, we are only covering the articles for the special because that's all that's on the agenda for tonight. So, any particular order? We will go with, we can start with Article 1 if that's the will of the committee. I was kind of wondering, on any of these stabilization funds, if we could add $1 onto the motion,
Why?
if there would be a problem. I know.
Which one would you like to change, Mr. Chair?
I'm just wondering, hypothetically speaking, then just say it would be over 10 million or over. Okay. Looking for a motion on Article 1, deposit the stabilization fund.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to town meeting. Article 1 is submitted
Okay,
without the additional dollar.
The proposed motion is that the town vote to deposit $2,073,476.80 to the stabilization fund, and that to meet this appropriation, $2,073,476.80 be transferred from free cash. You made the motion, Carolyn. Elliot seconded that, correct? Okay. Carolyn, you will speak on this first.
I just would like to encourage everyone, I mean, you know, we've been complaining we don't have stabilization funds, we don't have money saved, we have an opportunity to put money in there. This almost seems like a no-brainer. I am hesitant to say that, so I'm going to probably have jinxed myself now, but I just encourage everyone to vote for this. I think, you know, this is what we've all wanted to do. We actually have an opportunity to put some money in there, and that's it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion on this? Like I say, everyone will get to speak up to 2 times. Okay, Lisa.
I'd like to second the comments by the previous speaker, but I would also like to add that we're doing this from our budget going forward as an ongoing basis. This is a one-time situation as previously described. I'd like to see it year over year so the money is not getting grabbed up by the departments, that we regularly have a percentage of our budget going into these funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak on this? We have any other discussion on this? Dave?
Yeah, part of the hearing, the emergency examples of a 9C cut, you know, I thought about that. Just, I know it's an example, it's just one emergency type. That kind of emergency would not be necessary if the cuts that I had asked for during the budget hearings were adopted, at least by the amount that I was asking to have it reduced. So a way to hedge against having a 9C cut problem is to make sure that you're not gobbling up every last dime in the income of the town right into every dollar of the budget, into the budget by every dollar. So I just wanted to make a comment. That was it.
Thank you very much for that, Dave. Any other discussion on this? Like I say, no one will speak a second time until everyone has had the opportunity to speak once, and anyone will only speak 2 times. Lisa.
Just as a follow-up to the previous speaker, that is, and to address what the town manager said earlier, is that's why it's more prudent to have the select board have policies in place with a percentage, with the understanding, to the town manager's point earlier, is that that there's changes from daily, monthly, yearly, but that's the whole point of having policies, so that our town manager, whomever that may be, then reports, while this is our policy, this is what's happened in the changes, but at least that's what I refer to as guardrails, and we get a report card against those set policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other discussion on this motion? Carolyn, this would be your second time speaking too. Thank you.
All I need to say, I just want to, I agree with the previous speaker. It would be, I think planning in the future to put money in the stabilization fund is a good idea. We also do not have crystal balls, so it's hard to make commitments beyond saying that it's a good idea at this point. I would just like to make a correction of one previous speaker. If 9C cuts come, we never know how much they're going to be. I mean, I was on the school committee at one point when they cut the circuit breaker in the middle of the year. So, I mean, a circuit breaker, that could be several $1 million. That's comes circuit breaker, special ed circuit breaker comes for a portion of out-of-district tuition. So they reduce the percentage they paid from like 75% to 25%. So those cuts are very hard to predict, which is exactly why you would use a stabilization fund for them, because they're not foreseeable. No matter how well we plan, we couldn't foresee that that's going to happen.
Thank you very much for that. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Any other discussion? Dave?
Yeah, just to kind of make my point maybe a little sharper, I am in favor, and I will be voting in favor of this article. The point is that the $946,000 that I was looking to claw back out of the budget because I didn't like the source that was being used is also additional hedging against the 9C cuts. So it's stabilization plus the reductions that I was looking for. It would have been extra protection against a 9C cut.
Thank you very much for that. Heidi?
I already had it on. I think that this is great for us to be able to do, and I just want to thank you for all your work to be able to uncover this money that you're finding, and I look forward to what you're going to be finding in the future. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
So what do we have?
I think it's 13.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
13 to 0. Any abstentions? No. All right, great, thank you. That is passed. Looking for a motion on Article 2.
I'll make a motion on Article.
Yes, Mark.
Can we have like a raise of hands for the making the motions, because we have like 2 or 3 people jumping in, and it might be different
We'll do
motions.
that. I like that idea.
You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm looking for a motion on Article 2.
I'd like to make
You
a
going to raise your hand?
motion
We just established this. Going to raise your hand?
for Article 2.
Diane.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation for Article 2, the water main improvements, Phase 6.
Okay, Diane made the motion. Do we have a second? Carolyn, second on that. Okay. Motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this? Hearing none. I guess we're ready to take a vote. All in favor? All opposed? I See 0, 13 is 0. Any abstentions? 0. Great. I'm going to be looking around the room, looking for a raised hand to find a motion for Article 3. Yes, Mark.
I would like to propose a motion that the town vote to deposit $2,835,111.91 to the Building Stabilization Fund, and that to meet this appropriation, $2,835,111.91 be transferred from the free cash.
So you're reducing the amount that's listed in here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Dave, you have a second?
Sure.
Article 3.
Article 3, this is
And then the other million.
building
can go to the
stabilization.
Fire stabilization.
Okay, Mark, you made the motion. You get to speak first if you'd like. You
Yes,
make whatever
I-
motion he wants.
I wanted to lower that by $1 million and then have that $1 million put into the fire apparatus stabilization fund, so that way we have that secured, since we know we have that bill coming. And let's get the funds in there and have it so it's all set, done, out of the way.
All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
You're talking two different special town meeting articles, so you can only address one. No, you can put it in there, it's just you can only vote the
We wouldn't be
special
voting
now.
I think he's explaining the theory.
Okay.
Which I'll allow the explanation of a theory.
Thank you, I just got to keep my numbers straight, thank you.
Vaughn?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could the maker of the motion please repeat his motion? I did not get the amount.
Excuse me, can you just repeat?
He's going to repeat the motion now.
Thank you, because I just
You're
missed
welcome.
that.
That the town vote to deposit $2,835,111.91 to the Building Stabilization Fund, and that to meet this appropriation, $2,835,111.91 be transferred from free cash.
Okay.
Point of-
Dave seconded that. All right, do we have
Point
any
of order.
discussion? Yes.
Are we able, okay, this is new to me, so are we able, this is an article that was presented to us for
Yes,
$3,835,111.91. And are what we doing here right now, or is what Mark's suggestion is to on the fly, like we do at town meeting, you can just change the article?
Mark is offering an alternate proposed motion than what is on the paperwork, which he's allowed to do. He's explained his reasoning behind it, which I've allowed him to do.
Yeah.
Just so it kind of avoids a question. Someone's going to say, where's the extra $1 million?
Well, point of
So
order,
that's
please.
where we are on this.
Point of order.
Wait
then.
a second.
Hang on a second. I'm still
I
answering
just
one
want to make sure, so if we vote no on that motion,
Yeah.
do we then come back and vote on this motion as
I will
presented?
then say, hey, I'm looking around the room looking for another raised hand for another motion. Then
Okay, thank you.
Diane or
Thank you.
somebody
Yeah,
might.
but the point of order, just
Yes,
quick,
Dave.
just before any question, is that the process again is, I think it was alluded to by the town accountant, was you can make one transaction in the motion, and then it would be put somewhere, but where? I mean, can it be put in a place
It'd
that?
be left
left in-
undesignated, and theoretically speaking, which we're not going to talk about the annual tonight, but theoretically speaking, in the annual, you had access to that. But according to what
If it rolls to that, then it's available for the annual.
could even be available for one of these other,
Okay, so
Things in there.
that's like a recommendation, but once it's there, it can go to whatever town meeting wants it to, theoretically.
it could be used in any one of these articles in here. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Arnie?
As memory serves me, and through you, Vaughn,
Yeah, the second was Dave.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, Elliot asked, yes. Arnie, keep going.
I thought I heard something, and through you, maybe our town manager could confirm what I think I heard, is that we put in, I believe it was like $1,100,000 approximately for the fire truck. And you said that we would make another payment the next year, and you would put something similar to that in there. So we would have the money in two payments. Was that did I hear that correctly?
That would be our intent. I can't say it's a plan because we don't know if we'll have that money next year, but that would be our intent, is to fully fund it before the payment has to be made in 3.5 years.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right, any other discussion on this? Diane?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think to Biz, this question would be, right now, if we take all of the stuff that we have allotted for free cash for these articles, we're left with $6,296,423.45. That's on a spreadsheet. I didn't add and subtract. I don't. Okay, so my question to you is, my first question is, how much of free cash are we going to use on the articles in town meeting?
For this area of this special town meeting.
No, not special, the regular
Annual?
town meeting.
Okay, sure. 1 second.
Let's try to keep discussion somewhat.
Oh,
Dave,
it's-
Dave, I'm just reminding people, please stop interrupting for a couple minutes. I'm just reminding people, make sure we try to keep our discussion close to the motion. Thank you.
The question will be, is if we have $1 million that has not been allocated, I'm going to say to Mark, I don't think we should reduce this by $1 million and just use another $1 million to put in that fund. Is that possible?
It's
I don't think we have an article for the fire apparatus, though.
We do have fire apparatus, that's the annual town
In the
meeting,
annual,
not in
yes.
the special.
Right.
So if you want to reduce this article by $1 million, that's fine. It's not in your special town meeting, but it will free up another $1 million going forward if you want to make other adjustments to anything else in the special town meeting. And once you get into the annual town meeting, if you want to put additional funding in the annual town meeting, you can. There's only a couple in the annual town meeting for stabilization funds.
I think my question is, have we used all of this free cash, or is there?
We have not used all of the free
Okay,
cash.
all right. So,
we have
so
used,
to my finance member, former neighbor, Mr. Strzok, I'm going to say, I really don't think we should lower this by $1 million, but take additional free cash that's $1 million and put it into the, for the fire apparatus. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Diane. Lisa?
So to follow up on the previous speaker's question, which was my original question at the beginning of the night, is to answer her question, the annual town meetings amount was $5 million for free cash that was presented for articles. Is $5,387,827.01. According, we got a spreadsheet on that. That's where I'm getting it. It took all the that's okay. It took all the. It's hard to keep track of all the paperwork. It takes all the articles and then gives the funding sources. Then, what I added for the special town meeting, and I'd love for somebody to confirm this with me, which is what I was doing earlier, is $6,335,215.63. So through you, Vaughn, to our town accountant, is that a number we're able to come to right now as proposed?
No, because the information that I gave you earlier, that was preliminary data. The town meeting warrant was still being worked on. So with the special town meeting, you have to add in the 90,000, which wasn't on there to begin with. So special town meeting use of free cash is, unless otherwise voted tonight, 6, 4, 2, 6, 0, 2, 5.55. That would be the special town meeting, and that covers all the funding going into the stabilization funds and the $90,000 request to fund balance deficits. and that is just the special town meeting.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Any other discussion? Arnie?
And I just, again, another clarification. If we do what Mark would like to do and take the $1 million out, the $1 million is sort of sitting there in limbo, and someone can just take that money for some other use. Have I interpreted that correctly?
Yes, you have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Arnie. Any other discussion on Elliot?
It's not that I don't want to spend money or put aside money for the fire apparatus, but this building stabilization fund, it's more likely to need more money for the buildings than we are for the fire apparatus, where we're getting some grant money and we're putting more to the stabilization, and we've got, 3-4 years to do it. So I believe we should just leave it at the $6 million and not reduce it by $1 million. So I appreciate Mark's sentiments, but I'm not going to vote for the...
Well, thank you very much for that, Elliot. Heidi?
I agree with Elliot. I think that the sentiment is great, but my understanding is that we already have over $2 million put aside for the fire truck, or that we're going to. We only have $1 million, and that's in the article.
Right, we have a current balance of 71,667.85. We're requesting in the article 1,150,000, which will bring us up to 1,221,667.85. So we'll pretty much have just about half, or a little over half, of the funding available, right around there.
By taking out this $1,000, and I don't know where it would go at this point, but is it going to be in a place where it will continue to work for us? Versus if it's in a stabilization fund, would that be collecting interest, or would it just be money put aside in our own bank?
What happens with unused free cash or unused retained earnings, same thing, is it rolls over to the next fiscal year. It
Okay.
does not close out. If it's not voted at town meeting, it rolls into the next year's calculation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Dave?
Thank you, Vaughn. I'm not against the idea, because in some respects, it protects us from having to borrow, because that's where it's heading. It's a borrowing article for the fire truck. The more, when we have the money, it protects us from that future borrowing that's going to be inevitable if we don't have enough money, because the future's uncertain. We have to use a crystal ball on this thing, and that's a hedge against that. Where building projects, you sort of work it out. You sort of say, well, which projects are a priority? What can we afford? Do we need a feasibility study? Oh, where's the money going to come from? And you work it out year by year. You make sacrifices every year to make it possible to do those items in the pipeline, those building projects in the pipeline. So I think I like it, because it's going to secure us from having to worry about debt after we're getting the South School project borrowed on top of a high school that's being borrowed. That takes us out to 2037. This project's going to come in, 2029, because it's a 4-year project to make a fire truck. So that debt will sit on the books on top of a high school, fire station, South School. On top of those 3 debt exclusions, we're going to be sitting with this debt on top of that. So it is a hedge against that kind of future debt problem. So I like the idea of protecting the future with it, because I think building projects are easier to kind of manage year by year, setting priorities based on what actually is available that year in, year out situation.
Well, thank you very much for that, Dave. Any other discussion on this? Lisa?
So I like the idea, I think, as well, because we'd be utilizing cash, but through you, Vaughn, to the town accountant. If we did not, finance director, I'm sorry. That's okay, sorry. Yeah, that's okay. Would this be debt, but the intention, correct me if I'm wrong, the intention on the fire apparatus is to be using free cash. It's not to, is the intention not to be taking bonding out on that at all? Because then the next question, just so you know the full context, would be, that would be debt inside the budget as opposed to a debt exclusion.
The intention is to pay cash for this fire truck, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we do pay cash. We do not want to borrow. Should we have to borrow, then yes, it would be inside the debt limit, and it would not be debt excluded.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Thank
make a
you
comment?
yes, Mr. Coulter.
I'd like to go back to Elliot's point. I think his rationale makes perfect sense. Once we put it into we have 3 years to pay off the fire engine, and we know we have a good sense of how to do that in future years. But once we transfer that money into that account, we will have a difficult time getting it out. And the buildings are 150 years old. We will work with whatever the finance committee wants to do. We'll be fine with it. I think it's prudent in terms of flexibility to put it into the building account and leave it in the building account, pardon me. We will get the fire truck paid off, as everybody has suggested, through free cash, through the budget. We'll get it paid off so we can avoid debt. I just worry about being able to get it out in an emergency if we have a catastrophic building emergency. I also worry about leaving it out there, going into the annual to be reallocated. I also worry about that. I wouldn't leave it out there hanging.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any other discussion on this? Everyone speaking twice. You've spoken twice. Anyone else speaking on this? Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll be calling. Chet, did you have something on this?
Mr. Chair, I'm kind of confused. Are we going to,
Yes, Chet?
are we going to vote on Mark's motion?
Yes, we will vote on the motion on the floor,
Okay.
depending what happens with that.
This is going around in circles here. It's crazy.
Yeah,
You know, we
we're going to vote. Well, we're going to.
discussion on something that we shouldn't have discussion on, seriously. Just vote on his motion, and then we'll vote on the regular motion. Let's get this thing over
Yep.
with.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion? Okay, we have 3, and that is... Okay, all opposed? What is that?
But Mark, we still...
I guess it's done. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion fails. I'm going to look around the room and see if there's a raised hand for a motion on this. Carolyn?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to town meeting of Article 3 as submitted.
For $3,835,111.91, to be clear?
Yes.
Thank you. Who's the second? You're seconding. Okay, I'm trying to be clear. Okay. Okay. Jonna is the second on that. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Okay. All opposed? Any abstentions? Dave's going to abstain. Okay. Okay, that is now completed. We're going to Article 4, Deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund. Looking for a motion on this. Diane?
I will make a motion that we accept Article 4, deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund in the amount
Actually, can you make sure you have the mic on and repeat that whole thing? Everyone at home is dying to hear what you have to say.
I'm sorry. Sorry. I would like to make a motion that we accept Article 4, deposit to Special Education Stabilization Fund in the amount of $283,586.
Okay, who's the second on that?
Carolyn.
Carolyn? Okay, Diane, do you have anything to say on this?
Only with no transparency, or transparency, I should say. I do work for the school department, and we did have a very, very serious thing a few years ago when we had a couple of kids move into town who were at out-of-district schools that were very expensive. So this makes a lot of sense to have as a backup. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? Looks like 13-0. Any abstentions? Okay, we have none. Final vote, 13-0 to 0. Next, we have Article 5, Deposit to Other Post-Employment Benefit Trust Fund. Looking for a motion on this. Do we have a motion anywhere on this? Carolyn?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to town meeting of Article 5 as submitted in the deposit to the other post-employment benefit trust fund in...
In the amount of $143,040.90.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a second on that? Elliot's the second on that. Oh, actually, I should have had a raised hand, but anyway, Elliot's the second on that. He didn't raise his hand, but next time I'm going to make sure we get a raised hand. Okay. Carolyn, you have anything to say on this? No. No. All right. Motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this? Dave?
Yeah, this I'm in favor of. I just want to point out, as I go into retirement from Finance Committee, that everybody remembers this $100,000 minimum. We should be looking at much more aggressive commitments to OPEB. It makes us look better. It's an important fund for the purpose that it was created for. Please pay attention to OPEB. It's an important thing to pay attention to.
Thank you very much for that, Dave. Any other discussion on this? Diane?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Biz or Tom or anyone, I would love to know how many people we actually have in retirement that... Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? Looks like we have 13-0. Any abstentions? No, 0. Perfect. 13-0 to 0. Okay, that is now completed. Article 6, close prior year fund deficits. Chet.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion on Article 6 that we close out the fund deficits for $90,809.92.
Thank you very much. Jonna, you're the second? Thank you, Jonna. Motion and a second. Chet, would you like to speak on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is a good article to close out, and these been on for, we just say 10 years, things like that. That's way too long to have a deficit for anything. And I believe that this no-brainer. We should just vote this in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chet. Motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion on this? Hearing none. Calling for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? We have 13-0. Any abstentions? 0. All right, that is completed. We're moving to Article 7. Looking for a motion on Article 7, transfer to the South Elementary Project. Heidi.
I'll make a motion to transfer to the South Elementary Project in the amount of $1,461,997.85.
Okay, as written in?
As written in the article warrant.
Okay. Diane, you're going to second that? Okay. Motion and a second.
Can I ask a question on this before we vote?
Well, we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to ask Heidi to speak on this now. So Heidi's going to speak, then I'm going to go to discussion on this.
Okay.
Heidi, do you have anything to say on this?
I just think it's a great opportunity that we have these funds that we're able to put aside and allocate. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? Lisa?
This is just more of a question. If the ballot question does not pass on April 8th, can this money then be used to fund a different South Elementary School project if we pass this? Or did you say earlier it just gets rescinded?
It does not get rescinded, it has to be reallocated. So it can go to any project. It doesn't necessarily have to be a school project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for that. Any other discussion on this? Chet?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just have, when if the school passes, the elementary school passes, and we transfer, I guess it's transfer the money over, what's left of $1 million, that interest that we're paying on now, does that get transferred over to the new debt exclusion, or does that have to be recalculated for new interest rate?
No, it doesn't get recalculated. We already have the cash on hand.
But
So
we're
it
still
doesn't
paying
get,
interest on it, right?
oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
my question is, that interest that we have now, and we put that, you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Yes, you want to know if we can take that funding and go out and reborrow on the project or refinance that $1 million. We cannot. We've already borrowed it. And it takes several years before you can even go out and refinance or reborrow. So it's not something we can lower the interest rates on or anything like that.
So the interest rate that we have now, if we transfer this over to the school, that interest, it would be two separate interest rates?
No, it remains the same as it is now. It was one borrowing. It's not a separate borrowing. It's actually cash on hand. So the interest rate and the borrowing remains the same.
Okay, that's what I was a little confused on. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for that, Chet. Do we have any other discussion on this? Hearing none, calling for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? I see 0. 13-0. Any abstentions? No. 0. 13-0 on that. That has also been approved. Okay?
Mr. Chair?
I-
I'm sorry.
Yes.
May I answer Ms. Dolan's question on people who are on our retired insurance?
Yeah, I guess.
Currently, as of 2024, our retirees on insurance are 188 total employees. 188. Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you very much for that. Now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Chet, do you? Okay, motion and the second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. This meeting is adjourned. I'd like to thank the public for watching. I'd like to thank the public for showing up, and I'd like to thank the presenters, and I especially would like to thank the Finance Committee. Have a wonderful evening. We're adjourned.